I went from losing for 6 months straight into then making over $7 million of trading profits over my career. And it wasn't because of some fancy indicator. It wasn't because of some, holy grail strategy they found. It was because I discovered, which I didn't even know this at the time, that it was called this, but the Law of Detachment. Once I learned that changed how I approached every single trade from that point forward. Now, I know this sounds kind of like woohoo nonsense, right? But stick with me for the next few minutes, because one, I'm going to explain to you exactly what it means, how it specifically transformed my own trading, and then most importantly, how you can use it for your own trading and probably stop the emotional roller coaster that I would know is what's kind of making you unprofitable for many unprofitable traders. And you'll want to stick around for the end of this video where I go over my 3 main steps that I use this and implement it in my own trading every single day. But first, before I explain all this, let's go back really quickly to where I got started, right? I was 20 years old, it was summer of 2017, and I opened up my first E-Trade account of about $6,000. And again, like most people, when they start, I thought I was gonna be next to Warren Buffett. I thought I was gonna be the next hottest millionaire on the block, and that trading was gonna be easy. I was wrong. I was dead wrong. Now, something that nobody tells you, and this is kind of how the Law of Detachment plays a role later in this video, but I was doing all the right things. I was watching all the webinars, I was reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts, right? You name it, I was doing it to study. And I was still losing money, right? You couldn't pay me enough to lose money. And believe me, I lost plenty of it. I would know because I am kind of OCD. I track everything, right? So back in August, right, I lost nearly $1,200. Back in September, I then lost $900. October, 0% win rate. Couldn't win a trade. Like I said, you couldn't pay me to make money because I couldn't do it, right? And again, when you're going through this period, you probably had the same thoughts I did, which is like, what am I doing wrong? Is trading even for me? Should I just quit? Absolutely had those thoughts early on of like, should I just give it up while I'm here, right? I can't even pull in a single trade of winning if I tried. Now, this is where it gets interesting because this is kind of the first hint of what the Law of Detachment means, because when I was trading back here in 2016, I cared too much. Every $100, $200 meant something, and if I lost a little bit of it, I was trying to go in the next day trying to make more or just make it back to break even, right? I was trading the money. And again, by trading the money, you continually reinforce this emotional attachment to the money that you're trading with, right? It's a kind of an upwards or downward cycle in either direction. Now, if we move forward a little bit, by February of 2017 here, again, I kept losing. And by this point, I was now down 70% on my first $6,000 account. I only had about $2,200 left. And if I continued doing what I was doing, I wasn't going to have an account anymore. I had to take a step back and I had to stop, which I did. And during this time that I took off, I essentially discovered what the Law of Detachment was, ultimately, which was going to make me or turn me profitable in just a few weeks to come. Again, I didn't know it at the time, but the future was coming. So what is the Law of Detachment? And then more importantly, how can you apply it to your trading? Now, let me tell you better in a way of what it's not, right? What it's not caring about the money, right? I know I've been saying people care about the money. You still want to know. It is still important. It's not like you're just not caring about the money at all and you start caring so little that you just start taking reckless trades. That's not what it is. What the Law of Detachment is being completely committed to the process that you're undergoing as a, unprofitable, becoming profitable trader, and completely detaching from any outcome from that. Right? Think about it this way. Imagine you are a professional basketball player, right? You're 100% committed to playing basketball the best you possibly can. You've studied your offense, you've studied your defense, you practice your life away, right? And you're in a real game and you do everything you're supposed to be doing. You set up for a shot, you take the shot, and then that's it. You don't care whether the shot goes in or not because you've done all the prep work that you could possibly do. And maybe this one shot won't go in or maybe it will, but you don't care because over the long run, the makes and the shots that do go in will make up for themselves, right? You'll get the results you want over time, but you don't have any attachment on this one specific outcome. What you do have attachment to is the commitment of the process that got you to that point in the first place. And so in trading, this is exactly the same. You should be 100% committed to the strategy and the process at hand in front of you. But once you've made your trade plans, you've managed your risk, you've found the right setups, and then you take the trade, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose in that very moment. You've done the work that is most important, and the outcome shouldn't be nearly as important. Now, I've talked about this trade in previous videos, but I want to go back specifically to the trade where this actually happened to me for the first time. Again, after I took that week off and kind of realize and discover what I needed to do, I just waited for a good setup to come along, right? I committed to that process and I was going to wait for a setup to come along. And along came Fannie Mae, and this is the daily chart look of it. And it panicked from $4 all the way down to $2. And this was a classic panic dip buy setup, right? And I already knew how this existed. I had put in the work and the practice to understand this setup. And so now it was a matter of time of implementing, right? I didn't care about how much I was going to make. If I go big enough, I'm going to make up all my losses up to this point. I did none of that. I simply wanted to buy with just 100 shares. I did that. I sold where I kind of should have sold. Still had to learn some more things. I actually sold a little bit early in hindsight, right? But I made money. I made $5.50. Now, that money means absolutely nothing, right? It's very small and minor, but it was the process that got me to that point to make that money, which was what the game changer was. This was really one of the first trades for me where I was truly detached from the outcome. I was solely focused on taking the trade. I didn't even think about making $5.50. I had no idea how much I was going to make or lose. I was solely based on the outcome. And that's when, if you do, focus on the outcome and you are attached, not detached, this is when you make the emotional mistakes. This is when fear and greed pops in. This is when you think you should go bigger than you should. You revenge trade, you change your trade plan to try to make, more or less money, right? This is when you get all screwed up and go through that emotional and unprofitable roller coaster. But when you're detached, something magical happens, right? You start actually following your trading rules. You start following your trading plan, your system, your process, etc. And the great thing about trading is that once you're doing that, the money starts taking care of itself. And here's the great thing about trading is that if you have an edge and you're following that level of detachment to your process, the money's going to take care of itself. I've seen it happen time and time again in my trading many, many times. And so that's what I really want to have you get ingrained in your heads from the law of detachment, right? Attachment creates emotional and, unwanted based decisions. Unattachment creates systematic and, proper decisions. And that's really the difference between profitable traders and unprofitable traders. Now, I know what probably a lot of you are thinking. You're probably like, that's great, Kyle. Sounds good. I understand it. But how do I implement that in my trading? Well, let's go over the 3 steps I mentioned earlier on how I kind of apply that to my own trading to this very day. Now, step 1 is what I do before every single trade. I would call this your pre-trade commitment, right? These are things that every single trade plan should have. So number 1 is do you have a setup, right? Is the trade in front of you a setup that you know and is part of that process that you've been studying, right? 2 is what's the entry for that setup, right? If you're buying breakout XYZ at $2, I'm going to enter at 2. Right? You're going to find out what your risk level is. That will determine how much you're willing to lose, which is a number you should know, right? Get detached from it. Know how much you're willing to lose, right? And then what happens when you exit? Are you exiting for a loss that you're willing to accept, or are you exiting for a gain, right? Every trade plan has that, and it's kind of already built in. In my watch list that I posted in Clover, I pretty much have these things, right? Or either as a general idea or in my own trading journal, I have this kind of trade plan already written out or mapped up in my head. Now, step 2 is what kind of goes into risk management. When I tell people at Clover Trading all the freaking time, the 1% rule. Okay, you really never want to lose more than 1% of your account in any single given trade, especially as a beginner, because that's going to help you with the law of detachment, right? If you have a $10,000 account and you're going in losing $1,000 a pop for every trade, in 10 trades, you're going to be gone, right? That's going to mean a lot more to you than if you're risking 1% of that account, which is only $100. If you lose $100, that's 1% of your $10,000. You should be able to lose that many times over. And yes, you don't want your account going down, but you're going to be able to stay in the game for a much longer period and be able to take many more paper cuts and not be so emotional and be able to take that trade unattached. And then step 3 is the review process, right? So you've done the pre-trade commitments, right? You've taken the trade with the 1% rule, and regardless what the trade happens, whether it's a win or a loss, you're reviewing it for what it is, right? Did I follow step 1 and step 2? Did I stick to step 1 and step 2 once the trade was actually on, right? Did I actually change trade plans? Did I break any trading rules that I have? And again, if you did none of that and it's still a loser, that's okay. That's a good thing, right? You were committed to the process regardless whether there was a win or a loss. Now, when I started implementing this consistently, my win rate improved a little bit. It didn't change all that much, right? It went from the 40s, no, it started in the 70s here, and it stayed in the 60s. But what really started to change was that my winner became progressively bigger than my losers, which was key, right? You'll notice here all these months stayed around the 60% win rate, but my average winner became significantly bigger than my average loser. And by the end of 2017, when we got in December, I had recouped all of those losses that I've ever had on that $6,000 E-Trade account, and was actually now back to break even. So I had lost almost $4,000+, and I made it all back by December of 2017. Now, losing $4,000 to making $4,000 isn't life-changing. In fact, it's nothing. I made no progress, right? But It's the system that I curated and created, because now 9 years later, it's what's allowed me to make over $7 million in trading profits. Now, of all this is easier said than done, right? You might be thinking, Kyle, that's all great, but I still find myself caring about trades. Like, how do I change that? And here's the thing. You might never stop caring. I even will catch myself still caring too much about certain trades. But here's where you change your focus. You're always going to care, but focus on what you should care more about, okay? So instead of caring about, whether I make or lose money, make sure you also care, if not more, am I following my process? Am I trading a setup that is part of my system, right? Am I following my trading rules? And again, over time, the caring for whether the trade or makes you money or lose money will decrease, and putting emphasis on caring on all the things we just mentioned will increase, and the money is going to start taking care of itself. Now, I've just given you that framework, which is what helped me from stop losing for 6 months straight to then making over millions of dollars over my career. But hearing it and implementing it are two completely different things. Imagine what your trading would look like if you had that level of confidence in your trades over time. Never second guessing your stop losses, never second guessing your trade plans, never changing or breaking your rules, right? That's what the law of detachment can do for you over the long run. Now, if you want to dive deeper into, the law of detachment, along with the strategies that I kind of apply the law of detachment to, right? My entries, my exits, the strategies I use, the setups I have, how I stay disciplined to follow those things, right? That is what Clover Trading is for, where we have done this for thousands of traders and helped them learn to do exactly what we've done in the marketplace over the last 10 years. And if you want to see me apply some of these principles to the actual trading that I have, watch this video right here where I talk about my favorite trading pattern over the last 2 years that's helped me make $2 million. Now remember, be committed to the process and detached from the outcome, and that's how you're going to win in trading and in life. Thanks so much. See you guys next time. Bye.